Joined today by three people who are very familiar with the medium of film. Just first of all, I'd quickly like to talk about our new initiative called Be Cine Skills, which is an awesome way for film schools to promote their work on our website. Students can share their videos and have access to the whole back issue library of British Cinematographer magazine. So it'll be launched very soon, so do keep an eye out for that on our website. So, on the subject of skills, shooting on film has seen a real resurgence in recent years, particularly in narrative. As you may know, this Friday the new Wes Anderson film comes out, Asteroid City, and that was captured on 35mm. So we're going to be chatting a bit about this resurgence in the medium and what some practical tips as to why you might want to shoot on film too. And then to round off the session, we'll be having an awesome demo from these guys about how to load a magazine. So please stick around for that. Could you guys introduce yourselves, perhaps starting with Steve? Just tell us a little bit about yourself and what appeals to you about shooting on film.
Wow, hello. Yes, my name is Stephen Wyatt. I'm one of the lecturers at the film production program at the University of Salford. I teach a level 6 module in cinematography called Lighting for Camera. I'm also a DP myself. And shooting on film, we all try and do it with a digital camera and try and find ways to make it look like a film camera. Just shoot film. I know there are economic costs at the end attached to it, but the look is still here now, and that's why we still use it. And it gives you an extra layer of depth depending on the project that you're doing.
Yeah, my name's Adam. I'm a graduate from Salford Uni. I was taught by these two. I'm a cinematography and lighting for camera lecturer. After I graduated, I went straight into working in a rental house, a Provision film. Yeah, the two at the back there.
There they are, back there.
My boss at the back. Yeah, we were shooting on this camera, which is ex-Provision. The University of Salford bought it from the rental house I work from. Yeah, you can see there. And shooting on film, it's just different. The noise, the feel, like the techniques. It's just totally different to digital.
Yeah, hi everybody. My name is Laura Hilliard. I'm a lecturer and a cinematographer. And at Salford Uni, I teach Introduction to Cinematography on 16mm. Why shoot film? I think it is one of the more rigorous mediums, and I think it makes me a better cinematographer, and it makes my students better filmmakers to learn and work with it. And even if you then go on to shoot every other project on digital, if you've learned on this, I think you're overall just going to have a technical skill that is unparalleled, really.
Fantastic. And we're here at a broadcast show. What do you guys think is the legacy of film in broadcast and TV in general? Do you want to start, Steve?
Yeah, it's kind of weird. I was one of those kids that grew up in like the late 80s, early 90s. So when you were watching sitcoms like Only Fools and Horses or Faulty Towers or, just pick a few, I used to always find there was that disconnect between the studio interiors and then the on-location stuff. And obviously all the on-location stuff during this era was shot on 16mm. The biggest part of that was it was portable equipment. Video cameras then were, massive things on pedestals. 16mm cameras were much smaller, robust. They were designed, they were used predominantly in documentaries for cinema verite movement in France, and that kind of simplicity, portability, and lower power consumption is something that we still kind of have today, and just always noticed that, I think, with a lot of programs historically. And I always was drawn to the stuff that was shot on location more so because it just looked more interesting. I didn't know why at the time, but that was kind of it, really. Yeah.
Yeah, also the cost factor as well. Like when video was first getting through, it was more expensive shooting on digital, and the film, ironically, was the cheaper medium to shoot on, especially like 16mm. When 35mm came out, it's just a smaller, less material. It's just cheaper as well to shoot on. So I think that's a big part of why.
Yeah, and I think about all the BBC newsreel footage that I have seen on 16 or on 35, and it's like I would love to be in that archive and go back through some of that stuff. But yeah, definitely film has a really predominant history in broadcast. It's not just been a narrative tool.
was going to say, I mean, they took a 16mm camera to the moon, and we were just talking with Zeiss, and they shipped the lenses, and that's incredible. Yeah, who else has managed to do that, especially with this gauge of film as well?
Incredible. And we've spoken about the past of film. And what do you think are the recent trends in the medium? And what have you seen in your personal work, at the university, and at your rental house?
I'll start then. Well, we currently had a job that inquired about shooting film, and unfortunately we don't stock any film cameras anymore.
Because we've bought them.
Yeah, because they bought them. But yeah, we basically had to turn them away and turn them to a different company that do. But we have seen a real resurgence in people wanting to shoot film, people wanting to rent these cameras from us to shoot film. So it is making a big resurgence compared to the digital world.
Yeah, I think when digital came out, and particularly like early 2000s, we get this like massive upswing in digital, and now we're starting to see people going back to shooting projects on film, or like we've kind of reached the pinnacles of digital in some ways. And in the late 90s, like film was really, I mean, some of those films shot on film in late 90s, late 80s, like incredible. What we were able to do with celluloid. And then we kind of took a pause on that, and I think we're really seeing people going back to film cameras. And I mean, I get calls all the time for like, do you have a loader in the Northwest who can load on 16 or load on 35? And because the film schools have largely stopped sort of teaching on celluloid, we're seeing a gap in skills. And so that's why really at Salford we're trying to teach film and trying to give our students sort of that opportunity. Yeah. I
mean, was it just to give a case study, like a friend of mine rang me in the middle of the night saying, I need a loader in Bournemouth for 5 weeks, 200 quid a day to load a Panavision Millennium 35mm. I'm like, okay, I'll try my shortlist. Obviously, everyone that knows how to load is already working. And then there are loads of second day season trainees who don't have those skill sets. So, they can't do that. I would have done that. I think a lot of us were talking about
I know, I'm like, when are the dates again, Steve? They paying my travel?
They're shooting now. I think they found a loader. But just there's that skills deficit currently, where there's no one in the younger ranks, in the lower ranks, starting off as trainees or even second ACs who have learned predominantly how to load digital cameras, who don't have the skills necessary to work with 16 or 35.
And 16 particularly, I would say music videos and commercials right now. I mean, we've all seen them on Instagram or, on Facebook, but like these really flashy sort of analog looking things that are actually being shot on film. Doc Martens is a big one that is always doing the commercials on film, and you can really feel it and see it's become part of their brand. And I think like in the branded space, film is really resurging.
It was kind of interesting, just with Doc Martin, an ITV drama. It started in 2004. They wrapped their last series last year. And I thought, like most ITV dramas, switched over to Alexa when that just became
I know, Steve, I was talking Doc Martin the shoe, but also...
Oh, sorry, yeah. sorry, yeah. Doc Martin, yeah, sorry.
But also the DV.
Yeah, sorry,
both
my
Doc
mistake. I got ahead of myself. But they shot from 2004 to 2022 on 16mm, a drama. Which wrapped last year. So I always thought that it was just going to be a natural switch, that they were going to go and become a digitally acquired drama, but they stuck with it, which was interesting. And for anyone that's seen it, it's shot in Cornwall. It looks very sumptuous to watch, and that's part of the look of 16mm, that deep focus, high saturation, very colourful, lots of contrast. Blacks are black, which are always nice to see.
And tell us more, you touched on it already, but what is it about film that makes it such an awesome creative and aesthetic tool, and why might someone choose it over digital?
I think digital nowadays is all about clarity, resolution, pushing 8K, 12K and all this sort of stuff. And it's not like it's pixel by pixel, but analog, it's physical molecules and like crystals and on the actual film, and it's just unparalleled, because you can't really say 16mm or it's equivalent to 1080p, because it's not, and you just get a different look because of that. And it's like an actual physical thing, so like the physics of the crystals and that really does play to the image quality and like the grain and all that sort of stuff. But I'll let Steve touch more on grain and.
All I could think about, I just want to give an anecdote, just because I think it just brought it to my head. But me Laura, Adam. We did this little short with Arif, who's at the front here, another member of the Salford team. And we did a little short film on 16mm last year in November. And I hadn't shot like film in like since 2011 when Fuji was still making it. So naturally I got a bit nervous, but we had such a fun time doing the shoot. And I think because we only had 2 days to do it in, there was like, right, we have 5 rolls of film, 2 days to shoot.
That's it. When you're out, you're out.
There's a finite amount. That's like 50 minutes of actual tangible rushes. So we were all doing this, and when we sent the rushes off and we got them back, I remember when we put that message in the WhatsApp group, the rushes are back, and we're just watching all these dailies without sound synced, and it was just magical. Like
yeah, I think it makes the process really magical, and the feeling of getting it back and being like, oh gosh, is it in focus? Does it look good? Is it well exposed? But also, it makes you really focus on set, and for everyone in the process, the director, the actors, we know that we're really on, and I like that, and I think that's the way, the film and TV industry is, but to just like solidify it and have more of that pressure, but also that joy is great in the process and in watching it too. I think audiences respond to it.
The one thing that I always remember about that is we were shooting in a kitchen, like a one-bed apartment type thing, and we had to load. We had to reload a mag, and I was there with a changing bag on the middle of the kitchen island, and everyone was like setting up, being like, "Oh, mad," and I'm just there like, if I do this wrong, then I've just ruined like 250 quid's worth of film and like all this time and all this money, and it was just it's a crazy experience. But on digital, you just pull the card out, and you don't get that feeling and the rush and the adrenaline. Well, it sounds really weird, but it's just a memorable experience.
And you did that at maybe 11 o'clock at night or something after 12 hours. So
I was absolutely knackered, tired, and I'm just there. It's just full concentration with my hands in a changing bag. Yeah.
But you told me that funny story as well. So I'm just talking about loading stories, but
go for it.
Which one?
I don't know. Were you on a street or something?
Oh yeah, I've loaded in all sorts of places, on the street, on the sidewalk, like in somebody's closet, because you're not sure if the magazines are leaking light. Yeah, but I do think it gives filmmakers a confidence. And a lot of our industry is mechanical and like labor based, and this really brings that home. And yeah.
Tell us a bit more about that workflow. For people who might not be familiar with the film workflow, how does it differ to the digital workflow?
So this is some dummy roll film. It's been exposed to light, but this would be in a can and taped up, and then you cannot expose it to light until you're actually exposing it to the image that you want to see, and then it goes back into the other side of the light tight box, and then we unload it in a changing bag into the can, and we send that to the lab, and then it gets developed. So really, it's about making sure that it doesn't get exposed to light. You can show an SD card to the sun all you want, and it might get a little hot, but it'll be okay.
Your hands are not faster than the speed of light. That's one thing that a mentor used to tell me all the time. So the moment you've done that, that's £400 worth of work just down the pan. So you've got to be very, very careful. And also, importantly, workflow. I like to label which side is what. So feed, take up, not to be confused. You load on the feed side, and all your exposed rushes go on the take up side. Obviously, that take up side has to be unloaded in a dark bag, because that's got all the material you shot that day. And imagine repeating this process, as Laura and Adam have said. You could be doing 3, 4, 5 mag changes, probably more if you're shooting lots of dialogue. So just remembering kind of what side goes where, and knowing the inside and out of these magazines is kind of like crucial for a second AC.
But even more than just loading, it's also like pulling focus with a tape measure, because now a lot of these cameras are updated with really high-tech monitors, and monitors that are like basically what you'd expect from digital cameras. The one that we have doesn't have that, because it's actually a better teaching tool to not allow the students to really rely on the monitor. I'm sure we've all been on set and the monitors go down or the wireless stuff goes down, and you're like, oh shoot, what are we gonna do? Well, what we're gonna do is like look through the eyepiece, and we're gonna use a tape measure for focus, and we're gonna use a light meter for exposure. And if you know those skills, like no matter what situation that you're gonna be in, you're gonna be okay because you're confident with like your math and your science and your background information. Yeah.
It's definitely like transferable skills. So like if you know like how to light meter, how to focus with a tape measure, then they also like correlate to digital as well. Like the skills are transferable between the film and digital, so it is a good medium to like do it manually and not rely on all these tools. And then when you do get them tools, it's more of a help rather than a necessity.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's valuable for sort of like everyone to learn, or like even if you're not going to shoot your next like TV spot on film, like if you have these skills and the monitor goes down, you can do it, you know?
Absolutely. And tell us more about the post-production process and how that differs, and how many labs are left in the UK for processing film?
So there are a couple. There are two main labs that are still working, which is Cine Lab, which is a bigger lab, and then Kodak and Digital Orchard at Pinewood Studios. And both are at Pinewood. Kodak and Digital Orchard are a bit smaller. We process our film with Kodak, and then it goes next door to the Digital Orchard folks. But basically, we're not working with celluloid rushes anymore. So I courier the film for my class down to the lab, and then they process it usually in a day or two, and then I get an MP4 file, or you can request all sorts of different deliverables and rushes, as well as high-res scans, and then talk on the phone to their colorists as well. And then basically just download those files and input them right into Premiere or Resolve or Avid, whatever you're using. So it's really seamless into a digital workflow these days. I know there are some bespoke artists, filmmakers who are still cutting on celluloid, but in terms of a professional workflow, you don't necessarily need to do that.
Yeah, I'm just going to say, you get you edit your film just as normal. So you get a ProRes file and you can grade it, cut it, just like you would any other digital format that you'd shot, and I think it's easy. It's relatively easy.
Yeah, I think another thing as well, like film with white balance, it only comes in two different white balances. Like on digital camera, you've got how many, the increments of 10 Kelvin, but on this you've only got tungsten and daylight. So you've got to choose what you want to use, when you want to use it, and use it well. That's
brilliant.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, were you gonna? No.
I was just trying to think if it was. I mean, yeah. So, I think just the discipline of like knowing and choosing your film stocks, I think, which we can talk about later. But if you shoot tungsten film outside, all your footage is going to come back blue unless you specify it to be corrected. But if you want that in-camera correction, you can put a filter in the front of the matte box called an 85 filter, which warms up the stock, so it matches it to daylight. So it's a daylight filter, and then you have ones for daylight that do tungsten. But within that, and just talking about the workflow, and the reason why light metering becomes so important is you have to compensate for light loss through the glass. So if you've got an 85 filter, which is correcting tungsten film to daylight, it's 2/3 of a stop. So 2/3 of a stop. The easiest way I remember it is just if you're shooting 500T, just set your meter to 320, and then the compensation is out of your head. You don't have to work it out when you're doing your exposures.
And of course, if you're using a digital camera, like you would see the monitor go a little darker when you put a filter in front of the camera, but like working with this, you really need to know exactly what the filter is doing, right? And so these are the things that you learn and that are transferable again.
But you do that in your cinematography module in the second term of the second year, so that's what kind of we start the ground running with our students.
That's another thing with film stock as well, is if you want more sensitivity, so if you want to basically just increase the ISO, you've got to change the actual film stock. You can't just crank a dial and it gets brighter. So that's another thing you've got to really have at the forefront of your mind when you're shooting.
Good point. And Salford University is really interesting because it's one of the few undergraduate courses where film is still taught. Why do you teach film at Salford is my big question. And it'd be great to hear from a graduate perspective how that's helped you get a career.
Yeah, I'll start. It was second year cinematography, and we do like a test shoot on film cameras, and all the lecturers and all the lessons that we do is all about like the light metering and the focusing and how film works and all that sort of stuff, and then it kind of like builds up to this test shoot where you actually shoot on 16mm film and you get an actual product back from it. So it's really good, like actual getting your hands on shooting this sort of stuff, learning about it. And it's just skills, like once again, like I said earlier, it's just skills that transfer into your digital workflow as well, and it just helps. Just really does help.
What was your test on, Adam? Do you remember?
Oh, I can't remember. I think we were doing different lights.
Different colored gels.
We did Cuckolorus, I think. We were moving up a Cuckolorus to have like different lights and so we were shooting black and white as well, I believe. But it's up 3 years ago now, I think. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've slept since. Yeah. It's quite interesting.
Why teach it? I mean, I think one of the things that's unique about our course is that we teach introduction. So the very first camera class that you take on 16mm. A lot of other programs teach it, or you kind of get the film cameras when you're a third year, or if you're an MA, or you finally get to use it. And I'm kind of really about bringing it to as many people as possible as the very first introduction to cameras. Partly because, I mean, I want more people to experience the manual, physical things about it, but also just because it's more rigorous and it teaches you these technical skills. So, yeah.
Anything to add?
No,
perfect.
Great, yeah.
And outside of Salford University, what other initiatives and schemes are there for people who might not be at the university but still want to learn how to load and shoot film? Is there anything you'd recommend in particular?
Yes, there are a couple different courses, and there are more and more courses popping up. We're going to do a 5-day short course at Salford at the end of August, which is for anybody in industry, which is basically 16mm and 35mm small class with Steve and I, and you shoot every day, and then on the third day I think we drive down to London with the film and take it to the lab, go in and talk to the developers and the people at the lab, and then take it to the scanning and talk to the colorists and really take it through the whole process and then walk away with the rushes. And that's something that is tricky to do if you're like in the semester and I have 115 students, but we could do it with a smaller short courses, which is really good. And I know a couple other places are doing like 1-day courses or 2-day courses. The Sunbelt Rentals is doing a 1-day course on loading as well. So to skill up for people, if they're interested, it's possible for sure.
Just want a big shout out to Sunbelt Rentals as well, who's helping us with our short course on August 29th to the 2nd of September. They're helping us out with a 35mm camera, and they've given Katie Cardas, who is the manager of that depot, has been very kind and helpful to us in terms of like getting it over the line and us being able to do it as well. The biggest part of the course is it is a short course. We want to do it in 5 days. We've tried to make it as cost effective as possible. So within that, you get to not only load the film, but where our course is different is you actually get to shoot the film as well and get your rushes back and go down to Kodak, all included, and actually see the whole chain workflow. That's kind of like our USP with it.
Yeah, definitely.
But since then, interestingly enough, there's lots of there's been more initiatives with short courses in film loading, like across the country now. The British Guild of Camera Technicians have launched theirs as well, and the National Film School have their own, and there are lots of other institutions. So it's a really good sign that I think the industry is, institutions are recognizing that we actually need to equip the next generation of film students and filmmakers with the ability to load, shoot, and appreciate film as a medium, because it is a tool.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I know a lot of us are broadcast folks here, but I mean, particularly if you were putting a spot together that incorporated archival footage, like I see a great opportunity to bring a film camera in, or even like a smaller like Bolex camera you could really take out into the field and do some really interesting things with. So I think it's not just for narrative and commercial and music video. Like I think there are all sorts of different places that you could be incorporating it.
Yeah.
What do you think is the future of film? It's a big question, but is film here to stay?
I mean, I think film has always been here to stay. But people want to have the debate, and I'm like, it's no debate. It's going to stick around. But I do think more and more, it's harder and harder to get actually your hands on stock, which is a good sign. I hope to see more labs opening. And I also hope that a lot of the knowledge is transferred from previous generations, because I think that there's a lot of people probably in this room, I know a couple who have tons of experience on film that I really want to learn from and then bring into the future for folks. Yeah, and I think we might see some new cameras being manufactured. Steve and I have been researching a company who's manufacturing a new 65 millimeter camera. Oh. So, you know, thanks to Christopher Nolan for at the top of the game still shooting on film, because it means that we're getting innovation in this space, which is really good.
Yeah, the company's called Logmar, and they made a camera called the Magellan. It was used to shoot on Tenet, and it's a 65mm format film camera that's brand new. So it's got lots of, I think, just going into the future, I think two things that have really come with digital coming to the point that it has now. There's a lot of stuff that's fed back down into film. So just from an AC perspective, HD video taps are a really like effective way of actually being able to see and judge focus now in a way that with this camera, there's an old analog SD tap on it. It's black and white. It's low res. You can't really make judgments apart from composition and framing, really.
I keep it that way to make it hard.
But that's good, though. Yeah, this is a good thing for us for a learning tool. But cameras now are being upgraded. Again, Sunbelt Rentals showed us a Arri Cam 35 that has a HD assist, and that's made by an external company. And then you retrofit the cameras. And you could also record
digital dailies from an HD output, so that's great as well for playback. So.
Yeah, like Logmar, the Logmar Magellan, they have a small a viewfinder and a video assist built into, made by Small HD, built into the 65mm camera itself, which enables you to run SDI outs. So that means you can plug in all your wireless equipment as you would expect on a digital workflow production. So that all that cross compatibility.
And updated power outputs. The two things with these older cameras is like power and monitor that are a bit older or need to be sort of retrofitted. So and the new stuff, there are all sorts of different solutions to basically make modernizing that so that you can work with all the wireless and new accessories that you could want. But yeah, that's a 3D printed V-Lock battery adapter on the back of that, which is pretty cool. But yeah, basically it means that we can use our modern batteries and not an old school battery belt, which is great. So yeah, and the other thing to say is these cameras are built like tanks. I mean, RESR3, like, it's really built like a tank. I mean, it was meant to go, I don't know, into war, but like super durable. When you touch that, and like I encourage you guys to, after the talk, to come over to the British Cinematographer magazine table, because like you'll feel the metal and you're like, this thing can take it, can take production. And it still is, so yeah.
And to wrap it up, what advice do you guys have for someone who'd like to shoot on film for the first time but doesn't know where to start?
I don't know.
Can I? I've got one.
Sure.
I was thinking about it. What did I do when I was a film student? And this is what I did. The best advice is find production offices, find projects that are shooting on film, ring them up. Have they got any short ends? Right, if they've got short ends, you go, can I have some? I'll buy them off you or whatever, because they are kind of like consumables film stock. So short ends are like the ends of roll that come out of the camera that haven't been fully shot. 50 feet or
100 feet that you recanned and put in the fridge for later, you saved,
and use it. So as long as you don't mind loading like 100 feet or 50 feet loads, like through 10 different cans, that's a couple of minutes of film to make your project with. So short ends are a good way to do that.
The other thing, I think, when you say you're shooting a project on film, all of a sudden you get like people really excited. And so I would say like go for it and bring in people, and they will be excited about the medium too, and they will want to work on your project and help you with it, just for the chance to like work with this medium. And the other thing I think that is really useful, or before I was shooting, is get a 35 millimeter stills camera. That is all manual, no auto functions, and really learn about exposure and celluloid, and take it to the photography lab and get it developed, or even try to learn how to develop your own black and white photography, as that can teach you so much before you get to sort of the movie stage.
And that's a popular thing now that you can get. So
and it's cheap, right? You can buy a Pentax K1000 for like $100, maybe $50 for the lens, and then like $10-15 for a roll of film. So it's more affordable to do that for sure.
and you can get recanned Kodak Vision 3 stock that has been reloaded into 35mm stills canisters, so you can actually load like motion picture film with the rem jet removed and actually shoot motion picture stock on an old Pentax.
Cine still, right?
Yeah, Cine still another one, but they actually recanned Kodak frames.
Cool.
You get them on the Etsy. If you go to Etsy, I love Etsy right now. That's a really fantastic place to find stuff. But yeah, they do recans of Kodak Vision stock.
Nice. Any final words of wisdom, Adam?
I agree with all that.
Yeah, amazing.
Another thing I would say is obviously go to Salford. Go get the film course. They do so much outside the course as well, like the Kodak Nahimi. It's like you shoot a commercial and all that sort of stuff. And obviously we said we've done a short film. So if you're good enough and you're willing to do it, there is options there to go and shoot on film, make some short films, make some commercials. Through University of Salford as well. Yeah. You know, it's hard work working in camera and doing all that. So I think one of the things we do at the course is say it's probably about 60% like schlepping
Manual
heavy kit
labor.
around, you know, and then 40% of actually making the film, and then the rest of it is constitution. Like, can your brain be functioning for 12 hours a day, high efficiency? Mine stops working, I think, after 10.
When we shot when we shot that commercial, we were in 6 locations in a day, and we were like Media City, then Trafford Centre, and then back to Media City because we needed like the daylight and and it was just crazy. It was a crazy day, but our hard work was worth it because we did win 2nd place. So yeah, it's good.
Fantastic. Well, bear with us for 2 minutes while we rearrange the stage slightly, and these guys are going to give you a really cool demo into loading the magazine. So 2 minutes.